So I think we will get started. So I'd like to welcome everyone to the fifth webinar in our 2020 series of webinars. And the topic today is using energy data to engage facility staff in finding savings opportunities and driving projects. So this webinar was a direct result from our June members only webinar, where folks really wanted to hear more about this. So Adam from the City of Barrie has kindly offered to share some thoughts on what he's doing in the City of Barrie, and as well how we can use our Mayor's Megawatt Challenge reporting for the same purpose, to really find the savings opportunities and engage the facility staff. I'd like to thank our sponsors, IESO, Enbridge, and Simcoe. Okay. So on the agenda today, we will go through welcome and introductions. As I mentioned, Adam McMullen, the manager of energy at the City of Barrie, will show us how he uses his EMS reporting to engage and inform his facility staff. We'll then move on to Ian Jarvis, the executive director of Climate Challenge Network, will kind of take us back to basics and show us how we use savings potential to find the areas of opportunity in your building. So it'll be a bit of a refresher for some and will be new for others, but it's really important to understand those basics when moving forward. And then we have a few examples from some of our member municipalities. City of Barrie, City of Vaughan, and Township of King will show how they use the reporting to engage their facilities. And then we will take a deeper dive into connecting the savings potential in your buildings to operational and retrofit projects. And then we'll wrap it up with the funding available for these projects. So just some basic instructions. If you have any questions related to content of the webinar, please use the Q&A option at the bar at the bottom. And you can also use chat, but that would more be for technology questions or questions unrelated to the content. And make sure in that it is sending to the panelists. We will do our best to answer all questions during the webinar, but if there's a lot of questions and we can't get to all of them, we will circulate a Q&A document after the webinar, along with the recording. So we have quite a few municipalities on the line with us today. So on the left are our member municipalities that are on the line, and we also have a number of non-members joining us today as well. So we'd like to welcome you all. And I think some of you have been on previous webinars, but some of you are quite new as well. So please don't hesitate to get in touch with me if you have any questions, and my contact information will be at the end of the presentation. And we have a lot of supporting organizations here with us today as well, who are helping in terms of providing funding information and other types of support. So I think now would be a great time. Oh, and I should have introduced myself. I'm Catherine Wilson, Program Manager of the Mayor's Megawatt Challenge. All right, so now moving on to Adam McMullen from the City of Barrie. So he's the energy manager there, and a mandate to reduce energy and utility consumption. So he's going to give us a basic overview of the energy cap system, which is what he uses for his energy management software, give us an overview of how that works, and then get into the reporting and how he uses this to find opportunities in the buildings. So Adam, over to you.
Thanks, Catherine. So just as a bit of a preamble, we purchased the software in 2015 and rolled it out by 2016. Energy Cap, we did a competitive procurement, and Energy Cap won the bid. It was $60,000 roughly for the software cost, and there's an annual licensing fee of about $23,000 for that. I'm not endorsing Energy Cap. This is a software we use, but it's a great software. It has excellent functionality. The support staff are great, and I have pretty much nothing but good things to say about it. I'm going to show a quick video that just describes how the software is laid out and how it works. It's 4 minutes, and then I'm going to go over some of the functionality that I use it for, 3 examples of things I do, and then Afterwards, we can have a Q&A if people want to see any other functionality or have questions about things that I use the software for, I can perhaps show. So I'm going to share my screen right now. And I'm going to show a brief video of Energy Cap, the basics here.
Software explained visually in under 4 minutes. The first step to using Energy Cap is to enter your bills into the system. Your vendor bill contains all the information you need to complete this task. First, create a meter of the appropriate commodity. This lightning bolt is an electric meter. Second, create an account. You use the account number found on the vendor bill. Third, you'll create the rate schedule. It's found on the bill too. Before you can create a rate schedule, you will need to create the corresponding vendor. One vendor can have many commodities and rates assigned to it. To help you organize your accounts, you can group them with cost centers. These can be nested within each other if you need something complex to match your accounting structure. Meters are normally attached to buildings, and just like accounts, you can organize your buildings with organizations. These organizations can be nested to create any type of structure you need to model your physical buildings and campus layout. As you create the meter, you need to link it to the appropriate account and create a linked account meter. Once this step is complete, it's time to enter your utility bill into Energy Cap. There are 3 ways to get your billing information into your database. Bill Capture is a service that we offer that enters your bills for you. Bill Import is a way to upload your information via a spreadsheet or CSV file. Manual entry requires a person to type the information directly into Energy Cap. Regardless of the method you use, all bills are audited as they enter the system, and the focus is on the basic elements of the bill, such as correct start and end dates. This helps ensure accurate information is available for reporting and analysis. The combination of the objects you have created and your utility bill information comprises your Energy Cap database. Next, we add weather data to your utility bill information and get calendarized and normalized data. Calendarization allocates utility bill use and cost to the appropriate calendar month, and is required because most utility bills don't correspond to the exact calendar month. Normalization takes the calendarization one step further and applies the same weather to each year, allowing you to determine how much energy you would have used if the weather was the same as the base year. Now that your utility bills are entered and normalization and calendarization have been calculated, it's time for the fun stuff. First, you can analyze your data with dashboards by creating and customizing different dashboards for people in your organization or the public. Groups and benchmarks highlight buildings and meters that have abnormal cost, use, or demand. These buildings or meters often offer the greatest opportunity for cost reduction and savings, and help you look good with your boss. Reports help you analyze data in a variety of formats and varying levels of detail. You can also use Energy Cap to shorten the amount of time it takes to pay your bills. With the help of bill lists, you can review bill audits, approve bills for payment, and export the information to your accounting system. Chargebacks let you create bills for tenants or on-campus customers by sub-meter readings, percentage splits, interval data, or other kinds of calculations. Cost avoidance can identify your energy use and cost savings or loss. It works by comparing a baseline year to the current bill and applying any necessary weather or building information adjustments to your current bill. And finally, you can use Energy Cap to submit information to Energy Star to receive your building score. Using Energy Cap allows you to have a single point of management for both systems. That wraps up our high-level overview of Energy.
Okay, so that's just a quick rundown on the basics of Energy Cap, and I'm going to show you some of the functionality that I use quickly and to see just the most important and valuable things that I do with this software. And the biggest thing has to be the bill importation function. So for some of you, you probably get bills and you probably manually enter them into a spreadsheet and try to track that, which is a nightmare scenario. I did that for years, and inevitably you have errors with the entering of the data, and you can't really do any reporting or analysis because all you do is spend your time entering bills. So Energy Cap resolves that by having a very simple bill function. So I'm going to show you how we import the bills, and I receive these bills electronically. So this is an example of an email I received from Enbridge with a spreadsheet, an Excel spreadsheet showing all of my consumption data. I convert that to a CSV and format it, and then I'm able to enter it into EnergyCap very simply. I'm going to demonstrate this right now. This is the process of entering the data. There's about 40 bills in this Enbridge bill. And then you import. So before entering 40 natural gas bills into a spreadsheet probably would take me a couple hours. And then this automatically imports the bill, and it does an audit to see if there's any flags or issues with it. And it's flagged a number of issues because I have a lot of bill estimates because Enbridge hasn't been doing a lot of reads since of COVID. But that is quickly how quick it is to actually import the bills. The more important function which I want to discuss is the actual auditing of those bills for consumption and use and demand. So you can do a report and look at that bill, those bills that we imported, to see has there been swings in consumption that point to operational changes within any of your buildings. So I'm going to demonstrate that really quickly here. There's a lot of report functionality in this software, but this one I'm going to show a water bill. And I'm going to run a report on a water bill from last year just because it's a good example. And what happens is it looks at standard deviations between the current bill data versus previous bill data for that particular service. And if it's significant enough, it will spit out kind of a report on those particular services. So I'm going to scroll down quickly to one that I want to demonstrate here. And this one in question is for our courthouse. And this is a water bill. And you could see here that the use of this month was 62 cubes of water compared to 25 the same month of the previous year. So this actually sets up a good touch point to reach out to an operator or a facility supervisor to say, we're seeing a trend here, what's going on? And the way the functionality of the software works is that you can click on this meter and the data comes up for this particular meter. So this is a courthouse, this is the water data. This is a dashboard which shows the overall trend of this utility. And if you can just scroll over these things and it shows how much you've used and how much you've spent. So last year we spent $13,000 in water here. We had 538 cubes. And there's many different ways to look at this data, but what I'm interested in is the calendarization data, which is important because it spreads out the usage appropriately. And what you can see is that we've seen a trend in water usage over the previous year. And the funny thing is I actually saw alerts from my reporting previous to these about a water issue at this building. And I ignored it because it was a small dollar value, but eventually I got around to sending an email out to the operator saying what's going on. And they were only doing cleaning the building once a day because it's unoccupied and checking it once a day. So what they found was that there was a toilet that was actually, it's a sensor toilet that was running about 2 o'clock. It was running for an hour every day. It would run for an hour on nonstop. So that was causing a spike. And because the building wasn't occupied, you had this large usage that wasn't caught. So this represents, I don't know, 40, 50 cubes, maybe a month. And over a year, that's maybe 500 cubic meters of water. And if I go over to my actual data, I can say that that represents probably, I don't know, a couple $1,000s in potential wasted use for a particular utility of water. So this bill data, bill management, importing it into the software, doing audits is invaluable, and it keeps your usage baseline and level because you don't have these spikes that go on forever without you noticing it. The next area I want to show is the functionality regarding budgeting. So all of these meters have bills and there's data throughout all of my whole system here. And when you can develop budgets based on a billing cycle. So for 2021, I generated a budget using mostly 2019 data and some 2020, excluding the months for COVID. So that functionality is invaluable because now when I meet with coordinators, supervisors, I can show what the difference between their consumption is from what we budgeted. And I'm going to show a report here on an example of this type of budget. And I'm using East Bayfield Community Center. It won back-to-back awards for 10% reduction for the mayor's megawatt. And I'm showing from 2019 because this is a period where they had significant savings. And this report's pretty detailed, but I'll just quickly go over what it's showing and the value of it. The best part about this is these reports take no time to run. Literally, I would spend hours trying to do this before. So I'm going to zoom in here. So this is electricity for the East Bayfield Community Center. The left column is the actual cost versus the budget. The next column is the actual usage of electricity versus the budgeted amount. And then the third column is the actual rate that we budgeted versus, or sorry, the actual rate that we saw versus what we budgeted. And what this shows is that over 2019, the East Bayfield Community Center had a 15% reduction in consumption and a 16% reduction in costs. And the value of this report is that I can distinguish to the operators, to the supervisors, to senior management, where is the deviation? Is it from the budgeted number, from the rate, or is it from consumption? And this is a great example because it's showing crazy reductions in usage for this building. And I can split out and say this $90,000 is predominantly made up of consumption savings driven by optimization. And I could scroll down here to gas. The gas savings are significant as well, but you can see here there's more of a rate variance. So not all of these savings can be attributed to consumption. So this is a huge touch point and a great tool for operators to engage them, because now they have an understanding of what they are controlling and what that impact has. And if a facility, say, is over budget by 10% and that represents $100,000, if they can say, well, that's because the rate went up 10%, that's something that they can explain to senior management. But if it's because their consumption went up 10%, now they're going to be saying, well, why is it up 10%? So you really then put the onus on the operators to dig into their operation. The final thing I wanted to show is just kind of the overall data and analytics that are available from having this at your fingertips. So if we do an M&V, or if we do a project and we want to see what the savings are, before you'd have to maybe do site-specific metering, you'd have to do, you put resources into that to see the impact. But now with Energy Cap, I can quickly I can scroll to a building and see what the impact is on a much simpler basis. So for the wastewater treatment facility, I know some members don't have wastewater, but this is such a compelling example, I want to show it. We've done some optimization with the water usage at the plant. So what I can do is I can quickly go to water and I can go to monthly and I can see, is there a trend? And what this is showing, this is the use of water. And since April, we've cut the water down by more than half. And before, this would be a challenge because there's 3 meters at the wastewater plant, water meters. And the challenge with having 3 meters is that they have different usages from month to month, and I was never able to figure out where we stood holistically on the building. But with Energy Cap, it just rolls all of these meters up into water, and then I could see, well, in April we saved 1,500 cubes. In May we saved 2,000 cubes, which represents $8,000 in that month. So what this does is we did a project to save water, and then I can quickly come back to staff and say, look at the savings. This is the number, this is the savings, and then it drives further effort because they're getting quick feedback on the impacts of their actions. So those were the 3 quick things I wanted to show. I have so much more functionality I can, but I think sometimes spinning between pages isn't the best thing to do in a webinar. So if there's any questions, we can talk about those, and I could show further functionality if that's something that's interested or of interest to the group.
Very well done.
That was great, Adam. Thank you so much. I don't see any questions yet in the Q&A, but if anybody does have a question, because attendees are muted, please ask your question in the Q&A box. But panelists do have the opportunity to unmute themselves. So that would be like City of Vaughan or King. Okay, I have a question. Great presentation, thank you. How much time and effort did it take to set up the system?
That is a great question. The actual rollout with the software wasn't a large challenge in the sense that it's pretty standardized and Energy Cap has a good handle on what they're doing. It's getting the digital data in order. So you have to go to your utilities and you have to enroll with the utilities to receive this data electronically. And then you have to go to your accounts payable and say, by the way, we're going to change everything you do. And would you like to get your bills electronically, or we have to work out a new system? And it was actually amazing. My accounts payable were resistant to this, even though they were individually coding over 500 bills per month. And you can imagine the effort and time for that and the errors that could occur. So once we resolve that, now we get an electric bill that they code once that has 500 accounts in it. That saves them hundreds of hours of time. So it's a lot of effort to do the upfront work of getting the accounts payable on board to get the electronic billing. But then the rollout of the software took us 2 to 3 months, I think. And once you have your ducks in a row from the electronic billing side, it's actually pretty straightforward.
Fantastic. Okay, we have another question. Can you explain calendarized date and normalized data?
Sure. So calendarized data just means that they spread the usage of a particular bill based on the read dates of that bill. So if you have a bill that's from January 1st to January 31st, well, all that's a clean month. But if that bill staggers between, say, January 15th and February 15th, Energy Cap will allocate that data appropriately and prorate it to the month. So for our water bills in particular, sometimes we have a 60-day period of time between reads. So if you just did by the date that it was entered, you would skew the data because most of the data would sit in 1 month and wouldn't be spread over that month accordingly. Normalized data uses weather to see what the impact of weather can have on consumption, and it changes it assumes that we have a common weather year, and then it changes the data accordingly to that weather year. And there's a normalization function within Energy Cap where you go through each meter and you figure out what the balance point of the building is, and then it can do a function. I don't use the normalized data functionality in Energy Cap that much. It's challenging to go through each meter, and sometimes certain data, the normalization, there isn't actually a true good relationship. So I don't use that functionality that well, but I can export data and do analysis if I need to.
Perfect. Thank you, Adam. Another question. Do you get consolidated bills from utility companies electronically?
Yes, so Electra sends us a bill monthly. Enbridge sends us a bill monthly via email. Hydro One sends us a notice saying that it's available for download online. And then for water, we have, the City of Barrie has our own water service, so they provide an internal report to me monthly. And actually the biggest challenge is from my internal staff is that lady is very overworked, so I have to hound her monthly for that data. But the reporting from Electra and Enbridge is great, and it's so much simpler, so much smoother, so much quicker, and I think it's way more efficient than receiving bills. We do receive some other bills because we have buildings in other locations, and we utilize a bill capture service where you upload a PDF into a system, and then Energy Cap automatically puts that data into the database, and we do that for I think about a dozen bills.
Great. Okay, I don't see any other questions at the moment, but I actually have a question for you, Adam.
Sure.
How often do you use this to engage with the operators? On a monthly, quarterly, or does it depend?
Well, if you figure we get 3 consolidated bills a month, um, all those bills inevitably shoot out alarms for consumption variances. So I am engaging not necessarily with every operator monthly, but with, at least with those bills, I'm engaging somebody. So there's touch points all the time. We have semi-regular meetings either every other month or quarterly with our large client groups. So the bigger the building, the larger utility bill, the more often I meet with them. So our rec centers, I try to meet them every other month because they have lots going on. They have lots of opportunities. Smaller cost centers like parks, I probably meet with them quarterly or every 3 or 4 months because there's less opportunity for impact.
Right, that totally makes sense. And do you meet with them in person or
Well, there was
not
prior
lately?
to a pandemic. Yes, I meet them in person. That's important. I bring them coffee. And what you can do is you can combine a site visit where you look at budgeting with, oh, let's look at this piece of equipment or let's check out something because you're there. And it's like, oh, well, we want to change this or something has come up. Let's go take a look. And so I think meeting in person is invaluable. I think it's 21 clients that I meet with. So I literally, when you roll it out, you have to it's in your calendar all the time. And it's a lot of effort, but the payback on that is a rolling snowball that once it starts, it just grows.
Right. Okay, we do have another question. Do you have any data on your arena facilities? They're also large energy consumers. Do you have any examples from upgrading equipment?
I have lots of data. As you can see, I have all of the meters on all of my rinks. I could spend all day talking about upgrading equipment at rinks. I think the biggest point when it comes to those facilities is the refrigeration plant is your biggest load. So what are your set points? Can you set back and schedule your ice based on use? And that's the biggest thing we found when we started is that if you can set back your ice temperatures overnight when it's not being used, the biggest load is reduced, the run times are reduced. So that is the easiest thing to hit up first. And then it's just a rolling snowball. You can get into technical solutions with VFD on condensers but I think it's scheduling of your rink is the biggest thing in the compressor staging and set points.
Great, thank you very much. Another question. Are you able to use this information to prioritize energy efficiency projects? And what is your process in this regard?
That's a great question. The best part about Energy Cap is if someone comes to me and says, I want to do a sports field LED project. I go to that sports field, I click on the meter, and I realize they spent $4,000 in electricity last year. I immediately know that my $70,000 LED sports field lighting project makes no sense, and I can disregard that immediately. So having the data, magnitude of the data can allow you to screen out a whole slew of projects immediately. And then once you get into other projects that are larger scale, or if you have a rink that uses, $800,000 in cost and natural gas represents $100,000, it allows you to quickly filter, and then you can dig into the data to say, okay, well, this HVAC unit likely represents X percent of the data, and then you can start doing a more engineered calculation. But it allows you to quickly provide feedback on certain projects that wouldn't make sense financially.
Fantastic. Okay, I think we've gotten through those questions. Oh, another question. Do you support your operators with presenting your data to council to help secure energy projects?
I present to council every year, summarize our actions, our efforts, what we've achieved, and what I do is I highlight the best, the things that we've seen. East Bayfield Community Center has won awards 2 years in a row, so I'll get up there and I'll show that they've got a 10% reduction year over year, and basically the kudos goes to the staff and operators, and they really appreciate that. The senior management then says, oh, I didn't realize that we saved this much, good job. So there's a filter effect when you sit in front of council, and reporting to council is the best practice that you should do annually, if not more. And you should highlight your successes and say, these are the staff that have achieved this. And it just builds a case for further activity. When it's larger scale energy projects, there's a bit of a nuance there. We typically go through a capital budgeting process. So there's a whole other activity involved in that you have to kind of work through, where you build business cases with your operators that you've identified through regular meetings, because there's failures. And so a lot of the things we've done, building automation improvements, I've assisted in building those business cases, because I can identify in cases consumption spikes or issues with operations that are having negative impacts. And then on the other side, when we see the savings associated with it, like East Bayfield, we could say, well, this next BAS project, building automation, will likely have an impact of X, and this can build to the business case. So we're actually replacing the building automation at our Holly Community Center this year. And part of that was from the success seen from East Bayfield.
Awesome. Anybody else?
I just want to add, if anybody wants to call me offline and chat about this stuff, like my contact information is kicking around, so give me a call or email me. I'm always free to chat.
That would be amazing, Adam. Thank you. I realized your contact information isn't in the slide, but we can circulate that in a takeaway document. And I think a lot of folks already know how to get in touch with you anyway. So
yeah,
that's fantastic. Okay, if there's nothing else, we will move on. But yeah, that was really invaluable. We've had a lot of questions from members about how to do this. So I think that would be really helpful for people. So that's wonderful. Okay, moving on to Ian Jarvis, who's going to take us back to basics and give us a refresher on finding savings and identifying projects in your buildings. So using energy targets. And actually, why don't I just leave it to Ian from here?
You do it so well,
You do a
Catherine.
much better job than I do, so please.
Yeah, Catherine, thanks. And thanks for the opportunity to reconnect with this group. It's been a while, and probably the best subject I can contribute here is the idea of back to basics. And Adam, fantastic job with running through the foundations, which is how do you get organized around data, and the context for these discussions, not just with municipalities right now, but with all the building sectors we deal with, is notwithstanding the focus on the pandemic right now, we know that there's going to be an economic reckoning following behind that, which is going to put budgetary pressures on everybody. And behind that, municipalities, local governments, more than anybody, know that the climate crisis has not gone anywhere right now. If anything, it's rearing itself up to follow, and that there'll be escalating demands on everywhere to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. And local government has always been the leader in this space and still is, so the pressures on you guys would be the greatest. And we've always been intrigued by municipalities in the sense that you've got massive portfolios of buildings of every imaginable size and every imaginable type. And so of every sector we look at, municipalities probably have the biggest requirement, the biggest pressure on them to make improvements, and the biggest challenge. And as the title says, it goes back to basics. But if you're going to manage emissions, a key element is to manage energy use. And if you haven't got control of your hundreds of utility accounts and looking at all the different ways that Adam was sharing with us there, it's very hard to manage what you can't measure. That's kind of well known through that. So the context of this is the magnitude of your challenge, and the starting point being getting your data really well organized so that data become a resource for you, not a liability, not a pain, not a problem, but it's a resource that's informing you. And we do a lot of work, I think, as you know, in the healthcare sector, and This relates well to you can't treat a patient without having medical records and diagnostics. The work that the Mayor's Megawatt Challenge has been doing has been on the second level. So once you've got organized with Energy Cap or another software platform, the next level is the second level of diagnostics, which is how can you then take the data for the buildings that you are most interested in and move them to the point that they're telling you what they need. They're telling you where the opportunities are. So let's step through that. The basics again are targets, finding and responding to high potential buildings, and going to the detail of component energy savings to find in particular operational measures, but also to validate retrofit projects. So let's step along, Catherine.
Yes, there we go.
Here we go. So anybody who's with the Mayor's Megawatt Challenge has seen these analytics before. You have them for all of the buildings that you have registered for the program. This is as illustrative purposes, this is a town or city hall with one of your groups. And the basic breakdown here is between base electricity consumption. This is what the Mayor's software, having received information from Energy Star or Energy Cap, runs it through the diagnostics of separating year-round electricity use from the extra use in the summer for cooling and extra use in the winter for heating, using pretty basic regression analysis correlations between monthly energy use and weather data, and then looks at gas the same way. What's the year-round consumption, which is seen most clearly during the summer months, and what's the additional use in the winter to heat the building. Then comparing each one of those components with its target. So this particular town or city hall uses 13.1 kilowatt hours per square foot of base electricity, and we'll talk about quartiles in a moment, but the good practice standard would be 10.6 kilowatt hours per square foot after making a number of pretty readily available adjustments. So if you've got a rink attached to the facility, or if you've got a big parking garage underneath, those adjustments get made. So you can make a 19% reduction on your base electricity. Your cooling is higher than it should be. You can make a 23% reduction. The heating thermal in this case is particularly high, so it's almost double what it should be. And all of that translates into greenhouse gas emissions, translates into utility costs. So just with this analysis, you've got the beginnings of a business case for making improvements. So, and I think you'll be intrigued with how a number of the municipalities on the call today are going to be, have taken that and used it with their organizations to move forward. So determining savings potential, that's where you begin, and focusing on high potential buildings and high potential components of energy use. We've touched on this before. We set all the standard targets at the top quartile level. There's a growing number of you guys, municipalities, that are starting to beat up a bit on those top quartile targets. You're getting to them and beyond them, and we can run top decile targets in that way, so it just raises the bar a little bit further. But the idea here is for the baseload electricity we just looked at, if these are, in this case, it's fire halls, fire stations. So all of the fire stations in the database, that is their base electric kilowatt hours per square foot in the top left-hand corner. Pick the top quartile is 7.1. 1/4 of the buildings are already lower than that. 3/4 are not. So the top quartile says, let's get all of the other 75% up to that standard. Same then applies to cooling electricity, the range of kilowatt hours per square foot. What does top quartile look like? Same for electric heating, same for baseload thermal energy, typically gas consumption, and same for the heating thermal energy consumption. So when you see your targets in your energy performance and operations reports for each of your buildings every year, those targets that are being set are seen to be readily attainable through just good operational practice, because 25% of buildings are already at or below those levels. So that's the origin of the component targets. Next, please, Catherine. And there you then see those targets set up for each of the building types that the Mayor's Megawatt Challenge reports on right now. So administration buildings, towns, city halls, office type space, community centers, which have a much bigger set of adjustments attached to them because of different combinations of amenities within those buildings, but fire stations, libraries, work yards. So it's now practical to take a whole portfolio of municipal buildings, run, and again, ideally, like Adam, you're organized around your monthly data. You can take any year of records, run it through the targeting process, and have a really good idea both of the magnitude of the utility cost savings potential, the magnitude of the emissions reduction potential, and which components of energy use you focus on, because you know which building systems they relate to. So next slide, please, Catherine. And there's no black box, there's no mystery to any of this. We publish white papers and we update them as the targets change. So it will have occurred to you already that the cool thing about top quartile targets is as everybody gets better, the targets move. So it becomes a moving target in a good way because the overall building stock is improving. So the top quartile gets better and better each year. So you keep kind of nudging you forward. But we update these white papers on a regular basis. They're available on our website. So you can read through the methodology, and we occasionally get feedback from people saying, what about this? And what about that? You know, what about my fountain up the front there? Does that matter? The notion of target adjustments, which are laid out very clearly in here, is we always want to adjust for material differences in individual facilities that significantly affect your positioning on the benchmark. And again, that's well established. It's well over 10 years now that this work has been going on. And again, you can always refer to both what is the overall idea of the methodology, what's the architecture, but also what are the specifics. And we're always open to suggestions for improvements. So that works well for us. Can we go to the next slide, please? So I kind of like this example. So here is for one particular municipality, here is 5 of your fire halls, and this is the kind of summary table that you can collect for each building type in each area. So again, same components, the same actual usage, the same target usage, and how every building, even though at least 2 of these are pretty much twins of each other, their energy profile is completely different because of what's going on in terms of the age of the building systems, the age and condition, the original design, but also how the occupants are using them. So interesting aspects on electric heat, that almost none of these fire halls reported electric heat. They don't have any, except of course they do. And the monthly billing data shows you and quantifies how much that electric heat is. So when you go to the building, you can have that conversation. Where are you hiding those heaters, guys? You know, we know you've got them in here. And by the way, what's wrong with the HVAC systems that requires you to bring these heaters in? So then you can be looking at maintaining the equipment in place. The gas baseload is always interesting. Some firefighters like to keep, maybe they're really busy or maybe they're not so busy. They like to keep their fire trucks super shiny and clean and pristine at all times. And who cares about how much domestic hot water that takes? Well, you may want to accept that, but at least it's good to know the magnitude. So where you see these gas baseload variances, you can track those down to either the condition of the domestic hot water heater or to the quantity of domestic water being used. And obviously then you can correlate that, as I think Adam was indicating beautifully, you then go correlate that with the water use. So here's high gas base load. It's probably domestic hot water in a fire hall. And look, the water consumption is really high as well. So I got 2 indicators here to go and chat with the people in the building about. So you can see running through there for each of the building components, it prompts a conversation both in terms of looking at the maintenance of the building, the operation of the building. Is there a rooftop unit that's got a damper stuck open, and that's why our gas heating number is so ridiculously high? You can see the fire department one, the fire station one there, you know, really high gas heating component. And you know, I think you'll be hearing from Alana later, and marrying these metrics up with a program like Run It Right becomes really powerful, because now you've got the metrics. It's almost like the building is telling you about itself through its utility consumption. Like it's telling you its story. And so when you go there, instead of trying to walk around and find the things that might be going wrong, you've already got the medical records. You've got the history of the building saying, excuse me, you may want to look at the rooftop unit because my heating gas consumption is crazy high. So this as a little case study, and obviously you've all got fire halls and you've got administration buildings, you've got recreational buildings. You can picture these little tables where, as Adam was suggesting, you can do competitions and comparisons and compare and contrasts between buildings and use those to engage operators to say, how can we run our building better? So from targets to savings potential is a pretty simple step. Then the next slide, please, Catherine. And then kind of tracking this through, and we've indicated, because we actually don't have that many fire halls in there now, and I think all the members know you can add buildings anytime. It's not a significant cost, but getting that fire hall data set putting up, it's one of the most intriguing building types we've seen. It's pretty basic, it's pretty simple, really big variances, and a really engaged audience to be talking to about how these things work. But again, this is what the more detailed breakdown looks like in terms of both the dollar savings potential, the energy component savings, and the greenhouse gas emissions reduction potential. So that's our fire station story, which is, again, is one of my favorites. So thanks for allowing me to tell it again. So the third step on this is, once you've got those components, you've got, again, the makings of a business case, because you've got a pretty reliable estimate of how much you can save. So now is, what do you have to do to achieve those savings, and what is that going to cost? And again, in our experience, all of you guys are really good at projects. Once projects are identified, you're very good at putting them in place, and you're very good, because of your record keeping, at making them work. So making those connections there, where you've got electric baseload, and again, different building types have different sets here, and we'll look a bit more at that in just a moment. But electric baseload in most buildings is typically lighting, fans, pumps, and equipment. And you can tell this is an older slide, because today it would read fans, lighting, pumps, and equipment. Most building types we deal with, fans have overtaken lighting in terms of both electricity use and massively overtake them in terms of savings potential, and typically much shorter payback periods. So fans and pumps now become the priority, the focus, and wherever we see crazy base electric numbers, the first look is always at fans now, not lighting so much. It's still there. But electric baseload, those are the things that relates to. Electric heating, especially where it's not expected or not reporting, is typically portable space heaters that are around, which again are usually indicators of the fact there's something wrong with the HVAC equipment. So let's go fix that, so we don't have to be paying for electric heating. Looking at the air conditioning system, the condition of the compressors, the amount of outside air that we're trying to dehumidify in the summer, is where that electric cooling component comes in. Gas base load, domestic hot water in municipal buildings. Domestic hot water is the biggest single piece of that, but dehumidifiers especially in arena facilities.
Ian, you have gone quiet. Or maybe it's just me not able to hear you.
That's not good.
Well, we can hear him.
Oh, you can. Okay, so it's just me.
Can you hear me now?
Clear, very clear.
Yep, I think it's my internet connection.
Oh,
so.
that's not good, because you've gone quiet now.
Oh, okay. It looks like my internet connection, so let's proceed and hope everything goes okay. Sorry to interrupt. Please go on, Ian.
Can we hear me now?
Yep.
You're okay.
Yep. I can.
Okay, it sounds like our internet is wobbling here, so I apologize for that. Are we okay?
Yeah, I think it was on my end. It was on my end, so.
Okay. It's trouble. It's very hard to tell each other when we can't hear each other. Lamia, we good?
You're good.
Okay. So I'm going to use Lamia's thumbs up as being good.
Okay.
Okay. So we got to gas baseload, again, domestic hot water, again, the condition of the hot water heaters and the quantity of hot water used. And over time, you get really skilled at saying, so high base thermal, what does the water consumption look like? So those connections get made. And gas heating has the bigger number of varieties, but fire holes, lots of interest in the temperature that you keep the truck bay at, and where small differences have a really big effect, but also how often the doors open and close, the condition of the boilers, and ventilation is always the driver in our climate. So whenever we see crazy high heating thermal numbers, we're always going to look at the HVAC equipment and again find that damper that it hasn't closed since the day the place was built. Somebody put a screw through the damper and it's been wide open ever since. So this whole idea of these are pretty basic indicators, again, just like when you go to see the doctor and you get medical tests done, these are the tests for your building, and this is how the building tells you what it needs and the areas for improvement and helps you find the measures. So stepping along from that to the next slide, please. We would like your help. So are we into Barry already? Didn't we have the list of measures? The big list of measures, Catherine?
Yes, we did. Oh,
there they are.
that was after the case study, so we can do this now and then go back to it. That's fine.
Okay, let's touch on this because as Josh and Lamia and Adam go through how they've used this, we would like feedback from you. So over the years, we've been building these lists of operational measures and capital projects that relate to different building components. And you'll find this up on our website, so the MES Megawatt Challenge under documents on the members page. These lists are always there and we add to them on a fairly regular basis. So I'm not going to read through them all, but the electric baseload measures from, and this is operational ones, yeah, and then the retrofit ones below. So the intent originally was that these could be turned into checklists. So you'd find, I got high cooling electricity, you'd look for that section within here, and you could go through and say, no, it's not that, it's not that. Oh, that might be there. So use it. So would that be helpful? And if not, how can we best communicate or get this in a workable form into the hands of your folks so that you can first run the diagnostic, the analytics, and say, okay, I know which are my high potential buildings. I know which are my high components within those buildings. And now that third step of connecting that to measures. Would it be better if this was a checklist? Would it be an electronic checklist? Is it something where when you filled it in, you're willing to share it with us? Because we're interested then in looking at all of the ones that you send in and saying, man, there's a common factor here. And Catherine then, as you know, feasts on those things because they become the measures that we want to run a webinar on. Let's talk about how people have fixed this and how it improved and how they made it work. So we really need some, so we know what the measures are. We need some help from you as to how to operationalize this idea of making the connection from the component energy savings to the specific measures that apply, and then tracking when you implement those measures and watching those components fall back into line to where they were supposed to be. So I'll leave that. I know Catherine will pick that up kind of after this session to say, in what format would these measures be most useful to you? So that kind of does pick up that story. And I think then, Catherine, you're going to pick this up with Adam on how he's been using these metrics for his targeted buildings to make improvements.
Yes, so thank you, Ian. So this is the savings potential running through the same analysis that Ian just explained for all of the facilities in the city of Barrie. I removed the wastewater facilities from this just for simplification, and most municipalities don't deal with the wastewater treatment, but this is for the actual facilities. So there's two slides here. It's organized by greenhouse gas reduction savings potential. So these are the ones with the lower savings potential, and these facilities here are the ones with the higher savings potential. And you'll see what we refer to as the big six. These 6 facilities hold the majority of the greenhouse gas reduction savings potential. So maybe Adam, if you'd like to say a couple of words on how you used this.
Sure. We did this exercise to develop my conservation demand management plan. So it was a systematic way to kind of analyze my portfolio and then come up with targets that were realistic. And I've been generally focused on cost savings. So when I get a list like this, I look at the biggest cost energy savings potential number, and that's where I invest my time. So if I see a building has a $5,000 potential, I'm not going to meet with the supervisor of Fire Station 5 because I'd rather dedicate my time to City Hall because there's $100,000 available there. So when I look at these things, I always look at where's the best investment of my time relative to the cost saving potential, and that drives my effort. And I learned this quickly when I first started, where I chased a lot of things, a lot of projects, and I realized that my time wasn't being best utilized. So when you do this analysis, you benchmark, you see where the savings are, and then everything falls in line for me when it comes to the cost. So if I can invest money into a building that has $100,000 in potential and quickly get a payback, then that savings and that rolling snowball can then tackle something else. And it's funny here because the City Hall, which is for greenhouse gas, isn't necessarily the highest savings, but has a significant.
Mike, do you mind? Give me 1 sec. I'm on a webinar. I apologize.
That's okay.
That's funny.
Sorry.
So that's how I typically use this. And what I'll do is also, I could bring this to operators and say, here's the number, here's the savings that is available. And that's why your time is valuable. And I tend to filter how much material I bring to them, because depending upon the staff member, this is gibberish. Some staff love it. So you have to really tailor your delivery of material to the operators based on their skill set, because if you put a spreadsheet in front of some people, they cannot take the time to look at it, but they really are interested in the intricacies of their equipment per se. So that's how I utilize this stuff, and it directs my effort.
Yeah, Adam, could I step in there? The East Bay field for us is kind of interesting. It's the highest greenhouse gas emissions reduction potential. It's been an award winner for a couple of years in a row. And when we were first planning the net zero arenas project, we came out there and met with you and your guys at East Bayfield. And the interesting part there is it doesn't make it on the cost savings because it's pretty darn good from an electricity standpoint, but it's big on gas. Do you recall, and can you play back, how did your operators respond to that conversation in the meeting we had with them there about where those gas savings are to be found? It's heating thermal, so it's wintertime use of gas. It's not the middle of the summer. Your electricity is pretty darn good. It's all focusing on you using almost twice as much gas as possible, as you should be.
Yeah, and actually, this is great example of there's equipment there that is end of life, and as we've been renewing it, we have done a holistic dynamic review. So we replaced the domestic hot water system. We right-sized the boilers. We preheat the boilers now off of the ground loop. So we jump the water temperature from 50 or 60, which comes out of the water service, to 80 or 90. And we're actually seeing the natural gas numbers go down. A lot of the air handling units don't have the functionality to reduce supply air or when there's non-occupancy. So there's opportunities around those, and a lot of that equipment is up for renewal. And we're now looking at heat pumps as the first stage of heating when it comes to pool water, and then having a redundancy as a natural gas. And because there's a geothermal ground loop, there's a super efficiency there that can be gained, and it can reduce the loop of temperature of the building, which is problematically high. So that number actually spurred a lot of discussion about what are the next 3 years of capital investment we're doing, and where can we do studies or investigations now, so that when that budget comes up for review, we're not just saying we want to we've already done the pre-design, we know what we want, we have a price, we know what the savings are, so that business case capital wise is ready and good to go. And that's just like a revolving effort at all your large facilities, that when you've done the operational savings, you should always target capital, but you should be looking at large equipment changes in the future, and now doing the study or feasibility to figure out the best renewal. And when you start targeting greenhouse gases, that means you're going to have to start looking at heat pump technology versus going with a natural or a boiler system or something like that. So we're going to do the pool system, heating system next, and our first stage is going to be a large heat pump. And what I'm going to actually pay for that heat pump under the energy side, and the capital project is going to support the rest of that project when it comes to the redundancy using natural boilers.
This is unrehearsed, as you know, but and you may not have an answer, but if I look at those other rows, the police headquarters is kind of fascinating. It's got the biggest electricity savings potential. It's one of those buildings which comes back as presumably because it's looking to kind of eliminate the cooling electricity. Maybe the profile had said that limited air conditioning there, but the base load thermal, which is domestic hot water and so on. So that's a more, if you like, intriguing profile in terms of energy. How would you pursue that around, as you say, capital planning and operational improvement? I see a smile, so something happening there, right?
Yeah, it's funny. We constructed an emergency service campus, and the police headquarters is now going to be redundant. So I have literally cut off any effort in that building because we're selling it. So it hasn't had attention from me for a couple of years, and as they've drifted out, and as the opportunities for renewal from capital have disappeared, I've literally not touched it. So we have a new emergency service campus. Police headquarters has moved over there, and we're in the process of trying to sell that building. So the reason why it's so high is because I guess I don't care as much. It might be someone else's problem, but that's why you see those base loads, because that building was built in '95. It has significant opportunities. Whoever does buy it, they can save a lot. And I know what we need to do, but we just stopped investing in it.
That makes sense. Okay, are there any further questions for either Ian or Adam before we move on to the City of Vaughan?
I don't know if this is the right time, but Ian, you were mentioning about that list and how can we improve on that? I think if we could categorize the opportunities and rank them, that might be a way to allow people to quickly grab the ones that make most sense. And it might be as simple as what is the feasibility or what ones have the biggest bang for your buck. And then you target those top 3. And then once you get through those, you start digging into the other stuff. So that might be a way to improve that listing.
Yeah, that's helpful, Adam. The only concern is obviously that every building is unique, which sure. Is so what could be the biggest bang in one building doesn't exist in the next one. But the idea of generically, so for example, better control of outside air volumes is always going to be at the top of the list with heating thermal. So the idea of ordering them by the most likely, so that you're applying your brain power initially to the ones that are the most likely to contribute there. And the other thing that's been suggested before is that for those high potential ones, that we link it to a bit of a paragraph somewhere that talks about how would you go about testing that, or how would you go about quantifying that. So there's a number of ways of playing with this that could get all the way to, I know we're talking to organizations right now about the idea of operations toolkit that would give you a complete description of how to tackle the most likely operational measures. But thanks for that. That's a great opening bid on how do we best make that connection for all of you in all of your buildings to the measures that are best.
Okay. Fantastic. Thank you again, Adam. That was great. So now moving on to the city of Vaughan. So we did a similar exercise with the city of Vaughan, looking at their city hall and community centers. And we had a workshop with them back in
February.
February to
Yep.
look at that. Maybe, yes. So Lamia, if you would like to
Yeah.
say a few words on the exercise that we
Sure.
took with your folks.
I'm Lamia from the city of Vaughan. I'm an asset management specialist. We have had a workshop for Mayor Megawatt's challenge. We invited mostly the operations staff from facility, and we have infrastructure delivery and energy sustainability team. So we were about 18 in that workshop, and we got a good feedback on that workshop. The building, it is built in 2010. It's a LEED gold, and it was built in concrete and mostly a window curtain. So you can imagine the expenses on energy. This building is over 300,000 square footage, 4 floors. We have a tower too. So based on its the chiller, water chiller, and mostly the boilers. The things happening when we have the workshop, from the slide here, we can see that the component in the electricity, we are actually spending 16.7, and the target is 11.1. That makes the potential saving 34%. Dollar value, it is 266,000. And in green gas, what is that here? Green gas, oh, sorry, somebody is hiding that 35.5. And from the natural gas, we have the actual spending, it's about 5.2. The target is 1, quite away from the target, and the savings about 81%. Back what Adam was saying he looks at the cost to find the potential saving. I will look at it in both ways, the consumption and the cost, because these are too important. Plus, I would align it with like the operations staff too. They said when we do the retrofit, we will do it when the time is time to change it. That was the great feedback we got. So we align the things like the cost, the consumption, and the time to renewal. And for the renewal, we will use the retrofit to the best exercise, like heat pump system, and this will give us a good saving. What we learned through the workshop, there is the way how to collect the data. That's one of the challenge we have. And I like to see that energy cap implemented somehow, because we can do some analysis and move on to the second step where we can do the energy saving. We have done also the community centers the same way. I won't think that 2020 is a good measure to any municipality because of the COVID-19. The data won't reflect the actual things. The other problem we have through this exercise of COVID-19, the ventilation, I think Ian mentioned that, and we will learn from each other, certainly exchanging information that will help others to help each other municipality in a way to improve energy saving. Thank you.
Great, Lamia, thank you. And if you could share with the group who attended the workshop, because there was quite a good turnout there. So if you could just let everybody know that.
Sure. The operations services, we have the supervisor, the coordinator, even the operator themselves. They know the building the most in the municipality. They know where it is the best to manage it, and they know exactly what the problem we have, especially in the HVAC system. So the majority of the workshop were from the operator staff, and we have the feedback from them. We maybe we saw Leo in the panel. What he entered through my name. He was one of the operator staff in the electrical side. So they have a good input on
Yeah,
that.
Leo, do you have some thoughts on this?
I think Leo left us because
May have been called out on.
I think Leo left. Yeah,
Yes.
Leo was one of the part of the team who has a good impact in the electrical side. We have another staff from the HVAC system, Rob. They both incorporated with this workshop very well. So they add up a lot for like heat pump system that it was encouraged by them too. And I love the idea, but have we implemented any of them yet? I don't think so, because the workshop was at the beginning of February this year, and we couldn't manage any project into that.
Lamia, I think your deputy commissioner was at the meeting, wasn't he?
Yes, that's right. He joined us for the first part of the workshop. Yeah, and he encouraged the staff to continue in managing the data. And he certainly received the report too that we got from you. It was a really a very positive engagement. We want to have more people to be in that, not only the coordinator supervisors, we want the staff who worked into that. So mainly capital planning too, we want to engage as well.
Yeah, and I don't know if Leo's on the line, but I was totally impressed with how sharp, with how well you guys knew the building and how sharp they were on picking up these metrics. Because Adam's quite right. Some people look at these numbers and yeah, wow, that's fantastic. Oh yeah, I get it. And others, it's just a whole bunch of numbers. It's like Scrabble on a bad day. But you know, the most noticeable factor here was the idea of this is a LEED Gold building. It's a flagship, which it should be. But using 5.2 equivalent kilowatt hours per square foot of natural gas, even the 1.0 is a high number because it's really just domestic hot water. And I think it took like 10 or 15 minutes to get to the point that that idea of the make-up air unit, you know, 100% no zoning, no variable frequency drive, that make-up air unit just keeps pumping air in that building, love it or not. And the idea that it's even showing up during, as a heating load during the summertime, I say it was extraordinary how quickly that came in. And when COVID allows you back into the building with a bit of analysis and contractors, it'll be a very short payback to get a big part of the electrical savings and all those gas savings and get this building to where it always had the potential to be. This is a very high quality building that is not performing well from an energy standpoint, but it's not complicated. It's just work that needs to be done. So really looking forward to, again, when COVID allows you to get back in there and fix this. It's always also noticeable, you know, you can save a lot of electricity to get 35 tons of greenhouse gases. Mm-hmm. You can save gas, which doesn't save very much money, but save 242 tons of greenhouse gases. So we're looking forward to this being our, again, a flagship case study for the Mayor's Megawatt Challenge when you've got it fixed, show the results after the fact. And again, thanks for so many of your group taking the time to meet with us. I love that meeting. It was a lot of fun.
Thank you, Ian. It was a great opportunity for all.
Great. Thank you so much, Lamia. If there's any questions, again, please feel free to type them into the Q&A box, and I can get back to them. I'm keep checking. And in the meantime, we will move on to the Township of King. So again, a very similar savings analysis was done here on 9 of their facilities. And Josh, if you are there, if you could give us a little bit of a background on what you have done with these numbers.
Of course. So hi, everyone. I'm Josh Welch with the Township of King. I'm the climate change coordinator there. The Township of King is relatively new to the Mayor's Megawatt Challenge. I believe the last 2 years we joined. And so being able to get this data from Catherine and the team really was able to push our township in the direction of how we want to retrofit buildings and where the most important buildings that need work are. And just from the numbers alone from here, we were able to tack on to a recently, in the spring of this year prior to COVID, to a building accessibility assessment. We were actually able to add on ASHRAE level 2 energy audits to all of these facilities, as well as 11 more, to have a kind of a more holistic idea of, we know where these electricity savings potentials and how much they are in gas savings, but being actually able to narrow down the equipment that is potentially causing these issues. And the Mayor's Megawatt Challenge is actually, we're very grateful that they actually worked with the consultants and kind of hosted a miniature webinar for them to actually be able to talk about the numbers they have and have the consultants talk about kind of their expertise and where they'll be looking and where there's commonality to figure out where these potential savings are. So I don't want to take a lot of time for everyone since it's lunchtime. But yeah, really, we can't say enough. You know, the ability to be able to have this data and then use it in conjunction with projects moving forward, especially as King Township is aiming to reduce our absolute emissions corporately by 35% in the next 10 years. Being able to see where we can focus our resources, essentially, because we are a smaller municipality, was really key. It's really key for this.
So Josh, it's Ian again, and again that little webinar with your consultant was again very. I was impressed with how open they were to kind of looking at these numbers, because these are typically foreign to energy auditing firms and so on. They adjusted fairly quickly. What stage is the audit at? And for example, you know, is heating thermal is if you like the weakness of this group of buildings. So as there's always any portfolio, there's one energy component that tends to kind of speak the most. Have they been able to track down, for example, the Nobleton Fire Hall and the Schomburg Library? You know, those are really big gas reduction potentials. Were they able to find the measures, or are they still looking?
So they were able to find the measures. Obviously, because of COVID-19, you know, doing the in-person assessments kind of early March and April all got delayed. So right now we're at the stage of having the drafts sent to us. So they were recently sent to us within the last month. We finally got them all in. So as of right now, they are being reviewed. A number of them do identify those kind of gas savings potentials and the equipment that needs to be replaced. And a lot of them are kind of synergies between systems. A lot of our facilities have terrible air leakage, so essentially we're just heating the outside through, you know, poor insulation, and door frames, for example, are a huge thing with how our doors are set up. And for anyone who doesn't know, King Township has a lot of old buildings. A number of our buildings are 40 plus years old, and one of the audits, I believe, not one of these facilities, but another building that was a part of this audit, found out there was zero insulation in the wall. It was just 2 sets of wall with nothing in between. So obviously we would have never noticed, you know, never found this without an in-depth audit, or, you know, having facility staff go around to actually, you know, check this information. But yeah, again, it is helping us find savings, and the gift that keeps giving.
And could I ask another question, Josh? The other strength of these metrics is that they're the best way of identifying and quantifying operational improvements. In other words, more often than not, high heating thermal savings is because boiler controls are set incorrectly, or again, dampers are stuck wide open on air handling systems or whatever. And I noticed your comment there. when you hire engineers to look at this, they're in the business of replacing equipment, not necessarily, if you like, focusing on how that equipment is operated, because that's what design engineers do. With what you've heard so far, do you see the operational part being in there? And if not, how and when do you see engaging your building operators with looking for the things that they can do immediately to dig into these, to start pulling these numbers back before you have capital allocated to actually replacing equipment?
Absolutely. So one thing we actually spoke with the consultants was the need to add in kind of operational awareness and how much can we save just by operational changes. And thankfully, in all of the audits, they were able to come up with estimates on the amount saved, both cost and emissions, by just changing the operational standards from the actual staff themselves. So once our policies for COVID kind of change a little bit, we are planning to have a number of meetings with staff. We have begun to meet with some of our larger consumers, which the Mayor's Megawatt Challenge is also a part of in terms of another study we're doing with them, but looking at how we can change the operational efficiency of these buildings. For example, a number of our buildings had their temperatures set through a very basic BAS system at temperatures that just don't make sense, especially not even during COVID, but through times not of use where we're heating a building for no reason to the extent that our regular office is being heated. So just changing little things by dropping temperatures in, areas that aren't being used by staff or residents has a great effect on the end bill and emissions, obviously.
That's really helpful. I think you may be aware we're planning for Climate Challenge Network in general, a fairly big push on operational improvements and internal competitions and those kind of things, because a number of the people on the line have had really good success with, again, internal competitions where everybody gets excited and pizzas get bought. And I heard, Adam, you're pretty cheap. You just buy them coffee, like no donuts. That's I don't know how that works, but the operational side of this, in a time when after we're going to get a slug of infrastructure money going to come through, and you guys will fight for your share of that because that's the way that world works. But we're heading for some fairly lean economic times for a couple of years. So operational improvements, we believe, account for a large part of these savings. So there will be a focus in 2021 on effectively organizing within and between municipalities around really getting after good operational practices and verifying the savings that can be made.
Absolutely.
Perfect. Well, that, I think, is the perfect segue into, okay, no more questions. Great. The perfect segue. Thank you so much, Josh, for sharing that with the group. And back into the measures. So I think that's a great segue. Again, this is the checklist of measures that aligns with the areas of opportunity. And again, it's been divided into operations and retrofits. And as Ian mentioned, we'll have a focus next year on the operational the piece. So again, we were trying to figure out the best way to be able to use this and to be able to get information shared between the group. And there was a great suggestion to maybe go out to the members to see where they've had a particular success story, and maybe starting with operations that they could share with everybody else. I think that's probably one of the best ways without going through a cumbersome checklist. Oh, I have a question here. I think. I will get to that in just a moment. But yeah, if the Mayor's Megawatt Challenge members could think about this and what might be the best way to be able to hone in on the great things that others have done and to be able to share that through a series of operational webinars or something, that would be great. So I'm going to be sending out an email to all the members individually to go through this and think about the best way we can really get at the wonderful things that everyone's been doing and share that with the rest of the group. So I think I will leave it at that for now because we need to make sure that we get in our funding piece. But for those who don't know, this is the Mayor's Megawatt Challenge online system. And up in the right-hand corner, you can access documents where we have a series of best practices checklists, examples of energy management plans, previous presentations that have been conducted through the years, and those measures checklists are available here as well. And the technical white papers and all other resources are found there. And if you forget your login information or would like me to resend it to you, I would be happy to do that. So just let me know. And lastly, today we want to touch on the funding for projects. So we have FCM and Enbridge on the line to just give us a brief update on what's happening in their world. So we just need to unmute Patrick here. And I believe Patrick's on the line.
Yep.
Hi, Patrick.
Hey there. Yeah, I don't know if
Thanks
my
for joining.
camera is working for some reason, but anyway.
That's okay.
Great. Yeah. So thanks, Catherine, and thanks to all the presenters before. Always exciting and educational to hear what's going on. So in terms of FCM and our Green Municipal Fund, there's some old, some new. So in terms of what we call our core energy funding, which would have been more of what I was detailing at last year's annual forum for anybody who may have been there, it's still looking at predominantly net zero new builds, district energy type projects, as well as retrofits to municipal facilities. We're still offering the same types of staged of projects, like feasibility studies to pilot projects to capital projects. A note that through the studies and pilots right now, this fiscal year, which for us runs April to March, has been very, very high demand. So expect some sort of elongated review times for some of those grants, the studies and the pilots, as well as a bit of increased competition in terms of that. So all to say that we're not closing, or there's not a lack of money as much at this point, but the best bet to get funded is to just take your time and submit the the best project you can and the most complete application you can, which again is something that myself and my colleagues can help with. So please reach out. We do have some new type of funding that has launched for this year within the last time we have spoken. Last year, budget 2019, Green Municipal Fund received about $1 billion for 3 separate programs. The first being our community efficiency financing, which launched earlier in March this year. I know some of the member municipalities here are already applying to that or taking part. So this is really looking at supporting home energy retrofits for residents. So kind of those innovative financial mechanisms like PACE program or on-bill solutions. So currently we are closed for our capital programs. We have sort of expression of interest number two that we're calling it, for more study-based to kind of set up these types of programs. And then starting winter 2021, which I believe in February, there'll be sort of our standing offer release. So again, it'll be open continuous intake for both capital projects and the sort of study-based planning type initiatives. Next after that, we have sustainable affordable housing that also launched this spring. So that's looking more at obviously affordable housing and retrofits, new builds, making those kinds of housing units more affordable and energy efficient. We do offer grants in this, so for plan studies and pilots, as well as our capital projects that are more loan-based. And finally, launching this coming spring, which might be of interest to the group here, is sort of a community climate action. That's our working title for now. And it's going to be really looking at GHG emissions from large community buildings. Our current core energy funding is more looking at energy consumption reduction. However, this will be a little bit more wide open in terms of focusing on GHG emissions. So stay tuned for that. It's very much in progress. Finally, our Municipalities for Climate Innovation program is still in a bit of a holding pattern. We're hoping that it is recapitalized. Obviously, COVID-19 put the brakes on a lot of that type of decision making from our federal partners, which is understandable, but we're still hoping that can come back. And then just lastly, beyond the programming, we did launch this year an energy roadmap that I think listening to some of the information that has been provided there about your sheets of sort of solutions could really complement that. So I encourage you to take a look at that on our website. It has sort of fact sheets on different types of energy efficiency solutions and operational solutions, as well as sort of how to whittle down and target the types of solutions you might want to look on based on your geography and the fuel types available and all that good stuff. So definitely check that out. And absolute last point would be, if you haven't already, submit to FCM Connect, and also if you're looking for something to do, you can attend our Sustainable Communities Conference, which is coming up in October. Of course, it'll be online. I know Catherine and the MMC crew are involved in that, so please stay tuned and come join us if you're able to. And I'll just leave it there for now. If there's any questions, you can reach out to me. I don't know if we're doing questions now, but my contact information is available. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Patrick, yet again, for keeping us up to date on everything FCM has to offer. So thank you so much. And last but not least, we're 1 minute behind here. So Alana, I apologize. We might have to go through these pretty quickly, but we'll make these available to everyone in a takeaway document so they can access the information. And if anyone needs to log off now, thank you so much for joining us. And we will definitely be circulating the recording of this webinar and a takeaway document for your reference with the contact information.
All right. Thanks,
Alana.
Catherine. Are you hearing me okay?
Yes.
Perfect.
We are.
So why don't we just even blaze through to the next slide, because I'm sure everybody is more interested in lunch than me.
Okay.
I forgot that there's all that stuff there, but anyway, yeah,
no problem. We'll
do
just
the next one.
So there we go.
If everybody has kind of checked out and are thinking about their stomachs more so than energy savings, the one thing I want you guys to walk away with is just contact me at energyservices@enbridge.com. This can also be through my direct email at lana.commissar@enbridge.com if you are in Ontario. So as much as it's really cool to see municipalities like Banff be online, sorry, this is only applicable to Ontario municipalities. So with Enbridge incentive structures, our mandate really is to help you guys use your natural gas as responsibly as possible. And the way we do this is by providing incentives to really push that tipping point and really try and get a little bit of additional monetary incentives in, namely to help you get the return on investment that's desirable to push your case forward. So if we've worked together in the past, as I believe I've already chatted with most of you, we still have our commercial programs, our operational programs, and also our new construction programs. The other thing I would like to highlight and have you guys walk away with this is that we are coming to our year end. So if you have completed a natural gas saving project between November 2019 until November of this year, feel free to give me a shout and let's make sure we close those applications to guarantee those checks to get back to you. Our ideal close date is October 30th, but that being said, if it's we do have some wiggle room, so let's chat about that. The way that our programs work is we have our prescriptive program, which is basically a coupon for simple technologies. Our custom program, I work with you to actually make a model of what your potential savings would be or validate the calculations that you've already made. Roughly, we provide 20 cents per cubic meter. We do have incentives for feasibility studies, and I would like to clarify that those are not typical audits. Those typically do not count for our feasibility studies, but a little bit more targeted. So things like looking into biomass boilers, looking into geothermal, even given the fact that we are entering an age where net zero is like quite feasible and growing. We do provide some funding for like pathway to net zeros, but they do have to be quite a bit more in depth than even your typical ASHRAE studies. So we do also provide studies for steam trap audits, especially for the folks who are in Markham and in Toronto who are on district plants. Then moving from there, we have our Run It Right program, where we work with you to find some no-cost, low-cost opportunities. And not to forget that if you have some new projects where you're building net new, our Commercial Savings by Design item program actually helps you find better opportunities to reduce your natural gas consumption before even building the project. Moving forward to the last slide. So just to give you a little, get your brain moving on what kind of natural gas saving operations this might look like. This includes things like high efficiency boilers, steam trap audits, energy recovery like ERVs and HRVs, ventilation, BAS, then emerging technologies like biomass boilers or flooded heat exchangers, pool drainage heat recovery, solar hot water, and solar walls, all the way to things that are even more emerging, such as looking at geothermal heat pumps, optimizing your CHP to reduce additional natural gas that you might have to add, and also finally looking into natural gas heat pumps for especially operations where you have a very constant natural gas baseload. So facilities where you have a consistent natural gas baseload, like potentially arenas or potentially pools and dehumidification systems, natural gas heat pumps might be a good option for you as well. So that's it for me, and thank you, Enerlife, for having me involved.
Thank you so much, Alana, for your continued support and offering all this great funding information to our municipalities. So if it's okay with you, I'm going to add your contact information to the slide deck that we circulate. Just
That would
so
be
people
perfect.
can. Okay, wonderful.
And once again, my plug is, as our application dates are closing soon, ideally we would like to aim towards October 30th. So if you haven't had the opportunity to talk about your natural gas savings with me, please feel free to give me a shout as soon as possible.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And to last but not least here, our MMC annual forum is coming up again this year in November. So this year it'll be in an online format, of course. We're proposing 3 half-day events. So Wednesday mornings in November 11th, 18th, and 25th. The website will be updated with the topics and information in the next couple of days. But just keep these dates in mind, and we will send out further information on the forum as soon as it's available. And of course, it's free for Mayor's Megawatt Challenge members. And as always, here is my contact information. Thank you so much to all of our speakers today. That was really great information. Municipalities love hearing from each other, so thank you so much. And as promised, we will be circulating a recording of the webinar and a takeaway document with all of the contact information and further information about our forum. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a great rest of your day, and we'll talk to you soon.